Chapter 19. My little girl, with whom I used to play, who's this boy trying to take you away? Take a look at this, you'll love it. With rapid steps, Peter came up to the counter in the shop where Jenny worked. He waved a piece of paper just in front of her face. Read, he said. But before she could even look at the paper, he continued, I've won a trip to Hawaii for 2 in a week. We can leave on Monday and come back the Sunday after. What do you think? Jenny, who had barely gotten used to the idea of him being back after 2 weeks of complete silence, could not come up with an answer. These 2 silent weeks she had not known if he would ever come back, yet here he was, the smell of his aftershave tickling her nostrils and his beauty blinding her. She looked at him, only out of the corner of her eyes, pretending to look at the paper. After a short silence, she asked how he had won the trip. I won a quiz and came up with the slogan for detergent. Have you been to Hawaii before? His voice, his tilted head, they filled her up, made her face warm. She shook her head. Neither have I. I avoid the most touristy places, but together we can have a fun week. But Peter, no buts, Jenny. How often do you get the chance to travel to Hawaii? Do you want to go or not? Of course I want to, but stop your buts. If you wait to do fun things, when if it's your schedule, you'll never go. If it's not school, it's a band or your family. Do something for yourself for once. He put his hand under her chin. Jenny Rosén, will you go to Hawaii with me the day after tomorrow? Again, she looked into his eager blue eyes, his amazing, irresistible blue eyes. Yes, Peter Stoltz, I will. You want to go to Hawaii with Peter? Ingvar looked at his daughter, unable to believe she was asking this absurd question. He and Johanna, the mother, had never met the boy. It was only because Aunt Josephine had told them about Jenny's boyfriend that they knew she was hanging out with a guy named Peter. But you have to work a few more weeks in the shop, right? Although they had not seen each other much this summer, Johanna had noticed that her daughter was different. She had grown, matured in the few weeks after school was out. Jenny had seen and done so much these weeks. When they had discussed what was happening in the world, Johanna had heard new insights from Jenny and sensed an understanding that had not been there before. The relationship with this boyfriend seemed to broaden her views of life. She even questioned things Johanna and Ingvar took for granted. She had learned a lot, grown, and was in love, deeply in love. Jenny didn't admit it, but Johanna saw that this boy, whom her sister described as very nice and charming, had touched her daughter's essence. Peter was, as far as Johanna knew, Jenny's second boyfriend, but he was definitely her first love. When Jörgen and Jenny were together, her eyes had not been glowing the way they did now. Neither Jenny nor Jörgen had been sad when the relationship ended. But Johanna was sure that Jenny would be sad, even in despair, if the relationship between her and this Peter came to an end. She would have liked to talk more with her daughter about all this, but there was a few occasions. And now she was standing here, wanting to go to Hawaii with a guy they had never met. I know, I've already talked to Agnete about that. She's happy to take my job the next weeks. She's no summer job and she needs the money. She's been with me so often that she knows what to do. Auntie will help her the first day. Ingvar, who was washing the paint off his hands, he was painting the facade of the house this summer, understood that his daughter was serious. Sure, Ingvar had also been told that Jenny had a boyfriend, but he didn't take the love story seriously. She was still just a girl. He could not believe she was in love for real. How do you plan to pay for the trip? He asked. If she thought they would pay, she would be sorely disappointed. He won tickets for the flight and the hotel, and I can afford the food myself. Ingvar frowned. It annoyed him that she always had an answer. He spread his arms to the sides and said with an unusually irritated tone, You can't just go away with a guy you barely know. I know him well enough. It wasn't until she said it that she realized that she actually knew him very well. And yet not at all. Ingvar looked helplessly at Johanna. She, in turn, looked at Jenny. She was 18 years old now, their little girl. If she wanted to go, they couldn't stop her. You can go if you want, as long as you make sure Aunt Josephine's shop is looked after and we get to meet this Peter first. For the first time, Jenny didn't have an answer. Meet Peter? Geez, he would never agree to that. When she had told him her parents wanted to meet him, he had frowned without saying anything. During his silence, she had heard herself inhaling and exhaling so loudly she had finally held her breath to avoid hearing the sound of it. When he finally answered, she had exhaled slowly. Are they at home tonight? The rest had been a walk in the park. Over a cup of coffee in the kitchen, Peter and Ingvar had discussed the upcoming parliamentary elections, the fall of the Taliban in Afghanistan, sports, and the newly formed cooperation between Sony and Ericsson. By that point, Ingvar would happily have gone with Peter to Hawaii himself. Johanna observed rather than participated in the conversation. She saw the young man's worldly and charming ways, but she also saw how he skillfully led the conversation to neutral topics, avoiding personal information. He talked with ease about everything, but didn't utter a thing about himself. Johanna also saw how Jenny's eyes were fixed on Peter the entire evening. She listened to every word he said, nodded occasionally, and smiled when she saw that Ingvar liked Peter as much as she had expected. Oh, my daughter is head over heels in love. I always thought she would get together with KKK, whatever his name is. On the other hand, he's probably not exciting enough in her eyes, at least not yet. Not in comparison to this charmer. Johanna understood very well why Jenny felt like she did. She, a composed career woman and middle-aged mother, also felt Peter's tremendous appeal. Even before he came, she had decided that Jenny could choose herself whether she was going to go or not. She would anyway, their stubborn, independent daughter.